number one for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Wednesday, November 24th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, -7. In Smiths Falls, -6. Here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. City Police Board approving a 2% increase for the 2022 police budget, but the chief is concerned about the impact that could have on the city. Here's our reporter Prushka Gopalkista with more from Ottawa's police chief.
Chief Peter Slowly says that if the city wants to see progress from the approved 2% budget increase, more commitment is needed from all sides of the table. He explains if there's no commitment to implement resources towards mental health services, for example, this could have a negative impact.
I remain committed if we're truly committed. Resources will be available if we have clear implementation plans that have been co-produced, co-implemented, co-evaluated. Otherwise, this doesn't work.
This motion to increase the budget by only 2% rather than the previous 3% was introduced by Councillor Rawson King, who also said there needs to be more focus on similar services. The chief added although he was concerned about the impact of this lower budget, he says it would not result in any of his officers losing their jobs. The board's chair, Diane Deans, who will be on the Rob Snow Show later this morning, also briefly presented a motion that funding not used towards police services could go to a mental health pilot project instead. Pirshka Gopalkista, City News.
Now, one group fighting for more social service spending instead of money on police says the budget has left them disappointed and frustrated. Horizon Ottawa has been among those calling for money earmarked for police be redistributed to other departments. Now, the group pointed out the police budget has grown 300% in the past 20 years. Horizon member Sam Hurst says while the police budget has increased, the city is no safer than it was 2 decades ago. Hurst says the money could be better spent on mental health response teams as well as other social services. City News time, 9:02, and now your forecast with meteorologist Jill Taylor.
It's a cold start to our Wednesday, but we'll climb to +4 and plenty of sunshine through the morning, and then clouds increase for the late afternoon. Tonight, mainly cloudy, -4, and tomorrow some showers, a high 5. For today, the high near 4.
And right now it's -7 degrees in Ottawa. It's -6 in Smiths Falls. Ontario officials are meeting with the federal government today trying to hammer out that deal on a new child care plan. Ontario's education minister says the province will sit down with the federal government to negotiate a fair deal. Stephen Lecce said the money currently on offer from the feds for the province could not reduce fees to the proposed $10 a day. 9 provinces and territories have already signed deals with the federal government on a $30 billion 5-year child care plan. It would cut fees to an average $10 a day and cut them in half by next year. A NASA rocket is on a collision course now with a distant asteroid. It's a test of planet-saving technology.
The mission is called the Double Asteroid Reduction Test.
NASA's first planetary defense test to intentionally crash into an asteroid.
If you think about hurricanes, tornadoes, and blizzards,
it's the only natural disaster that we could prevent, an asteroid impact.
NASA's Kelly Fass says the rocket is racing toward an asteroid called Dimorphos.
We're not out of the woods yet. We still got to get that all the way out to Dimorphos, but this is a huge step along the way.
Dimorphos doesn't pose a threat to the planet, but it's merely the test subject in NASA's attempt to crash into an asteroid to change its trajectory. Jim Ryan, ABC News.
And I'm Andrew Boyle for News Anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
He's got the news and the views.
He's got views on the news.
It's the Rob Snow Show on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Oh, it's another beautiful autumn day in the capital. At 5 o'clock this morning, it was -10. And if that feels unfamiliar, it's because it hasn't been that cold around here since, I looked it up, March 19th. 250 days ago. But no matter, the news is hot, hot, hot. Good morning. Welcome to the Rob Snow Show on City News. We're always so happy when you make that decision to spend part of your day with us. And we will be covering a lot of ground between now and noon. We'll get into city issues. We'll keep you up to date on what's happening at Queen's Park. Plenty in the mix with federal politics, too. Coming up on the show this morning, just moments from now, City Councillor and Chair of the Ottawa Police Services Board, Diane Deans. The budget for the Ottawa Police got the okay yesterday, got the thumbs up from the Police Services Board, despite 2 days of protests and a lot of criticism. It's not the increase the police chief was looking for. The original ask was for an increase of 2.86%, $14 million. In the end, it's 2% or about $11 million. What will it mean? Why the last-minute reduction? What happens now? What are the lessons learned? We'll get into all of this with Councillor Deans. As I said on my Snow and 60 commentary this morning for City News and Shea 106, this whole business about money for the police or more money for social services, I don't think that's all it's cracked up to be. It was framed that way as an either or. I don't think it has to be either or. I think it's merely a case of political will and the political will of the mayor. Okay, Ottawa Mayor Jim Watson has, for the longest time, drawn a line in the sand. Okay, on property taxes. They'll go up, always, but nowadays it's no more than 3%. Now, it used to be 2%, you may recall, and now it's 3%. Politically, that has served the mayor very well. His record of holding the line on property tax increases. He has the election record to prove it. Previous mayors and previous councils raised taxes more than that. And isn't that what it comes down to? The zero means zero mayor, Larry O'Brien, back in 2009, led a council sort of, that passed a budget that had a 4.9% property tax increase. 4.9%. Long way from zero. Years before, back in 2005, Mayor Bob Chiarelli passed a budget with a 4.4% property tax increase. Doesn't have to be either or. More money for the police or more money for this or more money for that, more money for the other thing. What would be needed is political will, support from the voters for a greater than 3% property tax increase. By the way, City Council meeting this morning. Our friends at Rogers Television will lead the Rob Snow Show at 10 o'clock. Carry that for you in its entirety. Also ahead for us coming up after the 9:30 news, we all get to score our political fix. One day after the speech from the throne. Heavy on talk about climate change, not so heavy on the rising cost of living. The word climate, David, you can do Control F, if you're looking for a word in a PDF document.
I love the F text.
Yeah, Control F, right? The word climate in the text for the speech from the throne in the PDF document. Did this morning, just typed in climate. 8 times, it shows up 8 times, okay? The word inflation appears once.
Once.
Okay. Now, the phrase, to be fair, because we're fair and balanced around here, Rob Snow Show, okay? The phrase cost of living is in there twice. Cost of living. So, I guess if you're going by that standard, what does that tell you about the priorities of the government, right? That climate change is a bigger priority than your pocketbook, which is all well and good. Again, political will. This is the political calculation that this Trudeau government is making. And we're going to have more to say on this a little bit later. But you know what is a curious news item that is in the newspaper this morning? Globe and Mail. It's not on the front page, but what page is it? Page A4 of your Globe and Mail this morning is a story from Bob Fife and Steve Chase. And I always pay attention. When those two have the byline, you have to pay attention. It's about leadership ambitions within the Liberal ranks. Okay. Headline, Freeland biography comes amid leadership ambitions. Quote, Chrystia Freeland will be the subject of a new biography that the author calls a portrait of the most powerful woman in Canadian politics. It goes on, quote, some in the government are seeing early signs that Ms. Freeland wants the top job. She has become more responsive to backbenchers, returns their calls more quickly now. And on it goes in that vein. The names are dropped of other Liberal leadership hopefuls like Foreign Affairs Minister Melanie Joly, Innovation Minister Francois-Philippe Champagne. Mark Carney is running for every seat available in Canada, as you know. And Frank Baylis, you remember Frank Baylis? That guy's name was coming up. Yeah, he's made a ton of money, apparently. He sold his company, Baylis Medical, for like $1 gazillion. He of the infamous overpriced ventilators. Maybe remember that story from the great folks at Blacklock's Reporter.
Ventiscam.
Ventiscam, that's right. So that's interesting. I find that interesting that, leadership ambitions, stories appearing in the newspaper. I find it interesting for no other reason than Justin Trudeau says, I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to lead this party into the next election. And imagine a news story about the leadership of a Canadian political party from the Canadian political news media, and it's not about Aaron O'Toole. What a change of pace. Also in the mix this morning, as we've been reporting all morning, $10 a day childcare meetings taking place today between representatives from the Ford government and the Trudeau government. Will bring you the very latest. Now, every morning on the Rob Snow Show, we do something called the Talkback Hour. It's always between 10 o'clock and 11 o'clock. It's your hour. Okay, we can fill that with commentary about YouTube cat videos. We prefer to hear from you at 750-1310, 750-1310, 613-750-1310. Your calls, your opinions. And today, I want to talk about the most Canadian of things, the weather. I want to talk about the weather, extreme weather, and climate change. Okay. You could say this morning, and you wouldn't be wrong, we have extreme weather from one end of the country to the other. I mean, in British Columbia, it's been a biblical deluge, and it's not over yet. Atmospheric river, a term I hadn't even heard before until last week. BC has already been hit by one. We've seen the damage done. There's more on the way. 2 more atmospheric rivers. One Thursday, another in the forecast for Saturday. It just never seems to end out there. Meantime, where I'm originally from, Cape Breton Island, east coast of Nova Scotia, they're having all kinds of problems of their own. I called my father this morning, actually, about 7 o'clock. I said, what's the latest? And he's, 73 years old now, I think. And he told me, son, I've never seen weather like the weather we had yesterday in my entire life. That's what he told me. Nothing like it in my entire life, he told me. Pouring rain, howling wind. Rain that came down sideways the whole day. Not for a few minutes or an hour or two. The whole day. They were without power for most of the day. Now there's flooding in Sydney. Some parts of eastern Nova Scotia, roads washed out. Same for parts of western Newfoundland as well. Just wild and wicked. The likes of which he says he's never seen before, ever in his entire life. And again, similar story to the stories that we were hearing out of British Columbia last week. Some places, a month's worth of rain in a day. Now, that's just one person's experience in one part of the country this morning. But I mean, you look at what happened in BC last week, right? Epic rainfall. Months after terrible wildfires burning down entire towns. This time around, Coquihalla Highway sheared in two, 3 million people cut off from the rest of the country. What is happening, right? And here in our city, I mean, we've had our share of wild weather, wicked weather, epic weather, extreme weather. Okay, 2017, floods. 2018, tornadoes. 2019, more floods. Even worse than 2017. Now we're told all the time, the weather and the climate are not the same. Don't judge climate change by the daily weather forecast. But then the severe weather hits and the default position is to put the blame on climate change. So why don't we just talk about the weather? Okay? I just want to know your own personal impressions, thoughts, experiences about the weather these days. Is the weather different now than when you were younger? Is it more extreme now than when you were younger? And is extreme weather, in your own opinion, is extreme weather happening more often now than it used to? I love talking about the weather. I hope you do too. This is the Rob Snow Show on City News.
The Rob Snow Show, brought to you by Myers Automotive Group.
Advanced Mortgage Investment Corporation, AMIC, a professionally managed portfolio of mortgages, generating a great rate of return to investors.
Breakfast items, so it's breakfast sandwiches and scones, which have become a staple item here at the cafe. We have an assortment of pastries and cakes and desserts, so we're really big on our dessert bar, which a lot of people come here for. And of course, our delicious coffee beverages. So we do offer not your typical lattes, things like a chocolate banana coconut latte, cinnamon coconut, which is my favorite, and our take on even a pumpkin spice, which we add nutmeg and a dash of cayenne in just to give it a bit of a kick. When you start a business, you don't factor in all the things that could go wrong. You think anything that goes wrong, any failure, it's got to be something on your shoulders. You didn't market right, you're carrying the wrong products, you didn't price your items correctly, all the things, right? But when this pandemic began, things going through my brain were, I didn't factor in a pandemic. And we were just starting to grow. We were about to blow up, and I think I spent 2 days crying, and then I shut my business down for, I think, a period of 2 or 3 days. And just being at home during that time, I realized this is not me. Anybody that knows me knows I'm a hard worker. I don't give up, and I'm a go-getter. And I started to think, well, I should probably just start clearing out my freezers and posting and seeing who wants to buy what. And that was sort of how I built my momentum back up. I realized that there's still a large number of people that wanted to support us and were looking for the items that I had to provide. So we started there. Then I reopened literally not even 3 or 4 days after I'd closed my doors, and then started doing curbside pickups and deliveries, started doing the deliveries myself, free deliveries to the local community, going as far as Bell's Corners and Carp as well. And that's why we're still here. This community has really kept us going a year into the pandemic. We've had a changeover of staff a couple times now, and situations change, and when you can't offer hours and hours for your employees, you don't blame them when they have to go elsewhere. So I think that's also been one of the challenges is recruiting, training, and then they leave, and then bringing in more people and recruiting, and anybody in this industry will tell you that that's something we deal with on a regular basis, whether or not COVID's in the mix or not, but more so now because every time there's a lockdown, there's a risk of, will we make it through? And then you lay off more staff, and again, their situations and their circumstances change.
A pillar of community opinion.
The Rob Snow Show returns
On Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM
and 1310 AM.
Let's jump right into it with City Council and City Councilor Chair of the Ottawa Police Services Board, Councilor Diane Deans. Good morning.
Good morning, Rob.
It's great to hear from you, Councilor. Thank you for taking the time this morning ahead of the council meeting.
No problem.
Why is the budget for the Ottawa Police Service going up by 2%?
Well, the service asked for three. They asked for an additional $14 million. $11 million of that is compensation related to the service itself and the contract settlement. So there is not a lot of discretionary spending in the budget, but they asked for $14 million. We listened to the public. The Police Services Board listened to the, really opposing perspectives that people in our community have. On one side, there are those who want to significantly reduce the role of police in the community. And on the other side, there are those who believe more police translates into safer communities. And, I think what the board had to do is to synthesize all of that information that we received from the public and decide what's the best course forward. And so what we really boiled it down to is that we believe there's an important role for police in our community, but police have been responders of last resort because there is no other 24/7 response to calls for mental health, addictions, housing and homelessness issues. And I, for one, don't think you can ever police your way out of homelessness. So what we have said is let's free up the police to do the important work of police. And let's take the money that we save from what we did yesterday and give it to social services and ask them to match it. And let's kickstart in 2022 an alternate response to those calls. And, it's cheaper to do it that way. And also social workers and youth workers are trained in that and are a better response. And so we think what we did is really find that balance with giving the police the money they need to do the important work they do, all the while freeing up some funds to start an alternate response that we think will serve this community well.
So the $3 million or so, the difference between $11 million and $14 million, will go to social services, and you're hoping social services will match it to begin these endeavors. Is that what you're saying, Council?
That's my perspective. I have City Council to do that. I can't tie City Council, but that's what the board wants to happen. That's what we're doing.
All right. This is Ottawa Police Chief yesterday, Peter Slowly.
It's not the first time that a budget has been trimmed. It was trimmed back, I believe, in 2012. It was flatlined and we didn't hire for 3 years, and that put this organization into a tailspin it's still recovering from. If we make the same mistake last time, which was just a cut, and we don't build in the commitment to co-produce something better, this will end up being just that, a cut that will hurt this police service and hurt this city and hurt those that need it most, which are most from the BIPOC community.
Is this a cut?
Well, it's a reduction in the increase. So, I guess you can call it a cut if you want. But what the chief was talking about in that clip is co-producing something better. And that's what we're talking about, too. We're talking about building an alternate response that will free up police resources. So, I think we all agree that we're not just reducing their ask for the sake of reducing it. We're trying to find a better path forward and one that will serve this community better.
Okay. What is your message to members of the BIPOC community in Ottawa, the BIPOC community in Ottawa, and its allies who spent 2 days on the streets of Ottawa protesting? What's your message to those people?
Well, I think that they should be proud of the work that they have done, because what this police services budget did is signal a change. And I think it's an important change, and much of it is a result of what we heard from the community. And so I know that they wanted us to go farther and give no increase to the police budget at all. But of course, we had $11 million in increased cost and compensation. So it would mean a significant reduction in police on the streets if we had done that. And this didn't cut any officers. So I think they should see the silver lining here, that we have signaled a significant change, that we recognize that the path forward is not the path of the past, and that we're going to do policing differently. And, I think that's good for the community. I also think it's good for the police service, because we have seen a reduction in the support and trust and confidence in police, and we've seen a reduction in morale of our police service. And I think if we can turn that around, that we will restore trust and confidence, and we will improve morale inside the police service. So I think this budget is good for everyone.
I want to go a little more big picture just on the overall budget itself and the mayor's target of holding the line at 3% for our property tax increase. Used to be 2%, now it's 3%. What is your opinion, Councillor Deans? The 3% target, is it restricting the ability of the city to deliver services?
My perspective on 3% across the board, which is what the mayor asked council to direct, is that it's a lazy approach to budgeting. I mean, we did not do that at the police service. We told them to build their budget at zero and justify any increase they want, because there's only one taxpayer here. And 3% might not sound like a lot to some people, but it sounds like a lot to me. And when you factor in there's transit tax on top of that and water and everything else, that's a lot of money. And when you give everyone 3% across the board, what you're really saying is you have no priorities. And so I really think that that's not the right approach. I think there are areas we have declared a climate emergency. We've declared a housing emergency. I mean, if you want to address the issues of housing and homelessness in the community, you don't give it the same weight as you give everything else. What's the emergency if you fund everyone the same? So for me, it's not the right approach to budgeting, I find it a little lazy.
Okay, so I guess what I want to get at is there will be calls for people who say 3% is not enough, and we're part of councils that raise taxes more than 3%. 4% and 5%, right?
Once.
Just
Under
once.
Larry O'Brien, just once.
4.9%.
Zero means zero year, Rob.
Right. Yeah. Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. But
that inflation is running at 4.7% nationally. It's running higher than that here in Ottawa. So at 3%, it's actually lower than the rate of inflation. So maybe 3% is restricting the ability for the city to keep up with service delivery.
The senior staff will have to make a case for more money in years coming forward if inflation continues to rise. But I know that my wages aren't going up 4.7%. I don't think there's many people in this city that are getting that kind of increases. And so we have to be judicious with every dollar we spend of taxpayers' money. I've always been like that. I think I'm a fiscal conservative when it comes to spending, because I only want to spend what we have to spend to deliver quality public services to this city. And I think that we have to really scrutinize the budgets, and we have to scrub every dime that we can to make sure that this city continues to be affordable for families and continues to be affordable for businesses to set up and operate here.
Okay. What's big at City Council today? What's the big thing today?
For me, the big thing is the recommendation to put 3 warehouses in my ward at the corner of Conroy Road and Walkley Road. It's not zoned for it. In fact, the city 30 years ago initiated and implemented a zoning change to not allow warehouses on that corner. And
that's not far from where I am, Conroy and Walkley.
Where are you?
Well, we're just We're Conroy and Thurston.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Well,
that's
just
right.
down the road, right at the corner.
Just right there. Yeah.
Just down at that corner, and you know that your studios are in my constituency, and they're in the Ottawa Business Park.
The Ottawa Business Park. That's
it is not intended for warehousing. You know, it's got radio studios, it's got embassies, it's got headquarters for the Ottawa Medical Association, for Ridgecraft Homes, for Muskoka Kitchens, and paramedic service. They're all there. It's a business park. It's not
not a warehousing district. Yeah.
No, okay. Over on Hawthorne, in the Hawthorne Park, that's where they should be, but close to the 417, but not on a commuter route that's interrupting and conflicting with cars and cyclists at that busy intersection.
Okay.
And so that's what I'm on today, and I can't imagine why council would agree to this when it was the city itself that initiated zoning to not allow warehousing on that corner, but we'll see how that goes, Rob.
Okay. Good luck with that, Councillor Deans. Thank you so much. Very generous with your time this morning. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye.
Yeah, the City Councillor and Chair of the Ottawa Police Services Board, Councillor Deans. Your political fix after the news on City News.
#1 for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Wednesday, November 24th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, -4 degrees. In Smith Falls, -3. Here's what's making news this hour. The head of the Ottawa Police Services Board says a 2% increase sent off to City Council for approval for the police force was a well-thought-out process between two arguments. One, divert cash to social services, or still fund the police at the same level, which some believe would make our community safer. Diane Dean says there was a balance found, giving police enough, but also allowing cash to go to social services. She says this signals a change in the way Ottawa operates. City Council meets today, a couple of weeks before the final budget vote for next year. That will be held December 8th. All departments have put in their requests. The Integrity Commissioner report is among those being presented today. We've been reporting on severe weather in BC and more on the way there this weekend, but on the east coast of our country. Victoria County, Cape Breton, Nova Scotia, declaring a state of emergency. It's assessing roads and bridges after a massive, slow-moving storm continues to pummel Atlantic Canada. The storm has also washed out part of the Trans-Canada in Port aux Basques, Newfoundland. The worst is to come in Canada's 10th province, up to 300 millimeters of rain by the time this storm passes through tomorrow night. City News Time, 9:34. I'm Andrew Boyle for News Anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
He's the opinionated Ottawa icon.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's time to score your political fix. Joining us today, Cam Holmstrom from Blue Sky Strategy Group. Good morning, Cam.
Good morning.
It's great to hear from you. Long time no talk. Ashton Arsenault's here, Vice President at Crestview Strategy. Good morning, Ashton.
Hey, Rob. How you doing?
I'm good. Great to hear from everybody. So let's jump right into it. Lots to cover off. Ashton, what are your takeaways from the throne speech? Fighting COVID-19 and fighting climate change appear to be the big things, but substantive talk on what to do about inflation is kind of hard to find. What do you take away from the throne speech?
Yeah, I like a couple of things. I like that it was short. Overall, fairly conciliatory, not going to spike the government's future prospects at surviving the vote. But you're absolutely right. I mean, inflation, cost of living was mentioned in one line, and lo and behold, the government's solution to fix that was actually to create housing supply and to invest in childcare. Everybody knows that that is not how you fight inflation. We are facing inflation because we are rampantly printing money that we do not have, and also our good old Bank of Canada is completely out of moves to alleviate the situation further. So that issue is not going away. Other than that, I would say they did what they had to do with the throne speech. Everybody sort of got a nice sort of story to walk away with, and again, they did what they needed to do to make sure that the NDP and other opposition parties outside of the Conservatives won't vote against them. So not bad in terms of a day's work.
Not bad for a day's work. Okay. Cam, same question. Takeaways from the throne speech.
Well, there wasn't a lot there. Let's just be real. Like, most throne speeches are not the most specific documents known to mankind. Sure, they usually have a little more detail meat on the bone than this one did. But the fact is, this thing's got to get passed. There's nothing shocking in there. And I don't know what they would have put in there that would have jumped out that would have been, amazingly different from what they said in the campaign. I'm glad it was short because, you know what? I don't know how much more you could tease that out. Now, on some things, though, yeah, you know what? There were some nods of the head that maybe should have been there that weren't there. And, that's something that may come back to bite him in the end. But this was all about writing a speech that could pass. Getting this over with, getting the confidence vote done, and moving on to business. So on that score, it likely will achieve the goal. As it appears the block is as the block is appearing, that they'll be on side with it and we'll let the thing go ahead.
Okay. When you say things were not there that should have been there, what specifically are you talking about, Cam?
Well, you look at some of the things that this government has said they're moving on. Like, for example, pharmacare, a great example, right? This government said they're moving on that. There's something that they're doing. Nary a word of it anywhere in the speech, Like, it's one thing to, give the perfunctory tip of the hat towards the item and say that you're going to do it. It's something else altogether to just ignore it. And I think that's the thing I found interesting, is that I wasn't expecting a lot of grand detail and substance, but I was at least expecting the laundry list to be read off in its completion, in its entirety. And that did not happen here.
Okay. I want to talk a little bit more about the cost of living and inflation, okay? Because I noticed Daryl Bricker was tweeting yesterday. He's with Ipsos. And he sent out a couple of tweets. What we are seeing in our Ipsos polling, inflation coming up like a bullet as a concern for Canadians. It's personal and intense. COVID, climate, other issues dropping. Rearranging of public priorities has potential to sideswipe best laid plans of governments and businesses. And then he tweeted, expect to see much tut-tutting from economists, policy experts about irrationality of concern about inflation. Public has lots of money, etc. But people don't believe it. feel threatened, precarious, vulnerable. Unlike many other issues on agenda, this one is intense and personal. So what are the risks here, Ashton? If the Trudeau government gets the inflation calculation wrong, the political risks, what are the risks here for Trudeau?
I think they already have gotten it wrong, Rob, if I'm being perfectly honest with you. I think, yesterday's speech sort of personifies that. They don't have a grasp on the issue, and they don't have a grasp on the sentiment currently found in the Canadian population. Inflation is one of those things that we all feel each and every day. And the consumer price index and sort of that traditional required bundle of goods that families rely on, food, it's going up 5, 10, 15%. And to my earlier point on what are they going to do to address inflation, I don't think they have an answer. I don't think they have a solution. I don't even think they have a roadmap. And the reality is people like Pierre Poilievre have been harping on this for months, and inflation continues to rise. It hasn't leveled out. It just continues to rise. And one of the big things that the government has to do to get this under control is, A, stop printing money. If you tell Canadian families to go shake the money tree out back, they're going to laugh at you because that's ridiculous. Well, unfortunately, the government has a money tree, and it's called the printing press, and they just keep printing money that the economy does not have. Complicating problems further. Interest rates at an all-time low. The Bank of Canada only has so many moves at its disposal at this point to get this situation under control because of all of the economic challenges we went through together with COVID. So I think for the government, they've got to lay out a game script on how they are going to gradually over time turn off the spending caps. There was nothing about that yesterday, no plan whatsoever. And until they actually present a plan to Canadians, they are going to be facing some steep headwinds.
I mean, Cam, in the speech yesterday, it was, a scant few lines about how inflation is a global phenomenon. And it is. Inflation, Canada's not the only country that's suffering from higher prices right now and a higher cost of living. But I still think Canadians would like to think that their government is concerned about it and would have a plan to do something about it. Do you think they're just misreading this issue, Cam? What do you think?
I think they're misreading it, but I also think that Mr. Poilievre and the Conservatives have completely misdiagnosed the problem as well.
Okay.
Because it's right, this is a global problem. If we were the only ones seeing this kind of inflation right now because of monetary policy, I'd agree with Ashton, but we're not. Everyone is, because there's been massive disruptions to supply chains around the world thanks to COVID. Part of this, frankly, was because part of the inflation rate we're seeing is because, frankly, the prices of some things fell off a cliff at the start of COVID. So naturally, when they rebounded, the number's going to look worse than it actually was. But still, the fact is that those are all things that are beyond the control of this government. And to be honest, I don't know exactly how you fix that, short of getting those supply chains open, kicking things up, or or onshoring more production to help make those supply chains more secure. Those are legit problems that people are facing. Because let's be honest, I wouldn't get filled up my gas tank yesterday, and I paid through the nose for it. And yeah, it hurts. That means whatever I'm putting in the tank, I'm not putting towards Christmas presents or something else, or having to cut back from somewhere else. So I saw that tweet from Brooker yesterday, and I believe that. Because it's one of those things where it's, again, the gut versus the head. The gut is telling me that I'm paying more. This hurts. I don't like this, and I want my government to get under control. And I think that's the part of this the government has not figured out yet about how to answer. My problem with what the Conservatives are doing is they're putting up a false prophet in the window because it just happens to be the philosophy that Pierre Poilievre has always loved to hold on to.
Right.
Say, this
Pierre
is
Poilievre, false prophet. Pierre Poilievre is the false prophet. Okay. He's probably been called worse than that, I suspect.
He is not the Messiah.
That's in the bank, for sure.
But are the Conservatives making more of this than it is, though, Ashton?
I don't think so.
No?
I mean, there's sort of an Occam's razor there, right? Are you hearing about it more frequently? Are Canadians with growing intensity feeling more fearful about it? And I think the answer to both of those questions is yes. And as an official opposition, I mean, that's sort of your job. It's to take the concerns of Canadians to government and to point out holes where they're not performing as they should be. Right now, the government is not performing on this issue. Canadians want them to do something. They have done nothing.
Okay. Look, it's 9:43 already. Holy smokes, the time is flying here. Let me come back. I wanted to ask you about this Bob Fife, Steve Chase story in the Globe and Mail this morning. Oh, it's so juicy. Headline, Freeland biography comes amid leadership rumors. Well, the last I checked, Justin Trudeau says he's not going anywhere. Why are there leadership rumors? We'll talk about that, your political fix, here on the Rob Snow Show on City News.
So the birth of Absinthe was 2002, I think, 2003, and I was working at Urban Bistro, happily, where Allium is now. And then the space where Holland Cafe was came up. It's on the corner of Spencer and Holland. And I spoke to the landlord, and there's a lot of interest from a lot of other people, but he and I just, got along super well, and he put a lot of faith in me. So Carmen Turner is his name. He gave me the lease to the place and really pretty much gave me all the equipment in the place. So I was really lucky. I've been really lucky with landlords that way, actually, both my current landlord and Carmen Turner. Because if there hadn't been Carmen Turner, there wouldn't have been Absinthe. So we were there for a few years and just sort of outgrew the place. And then now we're here. It's obviously been tough, and it's been tough for everyone. I mean, that's been the big democratic sweep of in restaurants and the hospitality and the arts that we were talking about earlier. It's like everybody's been impacted pretty much the same. From everybody that I talked to, we're down 80%. We're climbing out now. I think one of the saddest things is everybody, we went down to 2 employees from 25. And we're now at 4, and we're bringing 2 new people on this week, so we'll be at 6. So it's little steps. So it's been tough. It's I've got the most expensive clubhouse ever here, because some days you come and you don't do any business, but you're here. But I'm grateful for what I do have. I think everybody's optimistic now, not necessarily just about the vaccine, but about the vaccine, spring, being able to be outside. I think you're going to see a lot of pop-up things happen in parking lots and on sidewalks and like that, rather than being actually inside somebody's commerce. I think we'd like to take it outside. I know my staff would. My staff like the outdoors now, all of a sudden, all 4 of us. 6 soon. We'll be doing some business in the patio in the parking lot, and we have a patio out front. And I think I hope other restaurants and stores will do the same. I hope that they take advantage of the sidewalk and doing sort of, guerrilla marketing and stuff like that, and really shaking it up a bit. You can find us at Absinthe Cafe at 1208 Wellington Street West in Hintonburg. And you can find us online at absinthecafe.ca.
Strong voice.
Strong opinions.
The Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
We're back, part 2, your political fix. In the Globe and Mail this morning, there is a story from Bob Fife and Steve Chase, and whenever they have the byline, I'm always like, ooh, what's that going to be about? And this one is Freeland biography comes amid leadership rumors. And it reads, quote, Deputy Prime Minister Chrystia Freeland will be the subject of a new biography that the author calls a portrait of the most powerful woman in Canadian politics and heir apparent to Prime Minister Trudeau. And it goes on about her leadership ambitions and some of the kind of coalitions that she's been building, more responsive to the needs of backbenchers, calling up other MPs, notes the Air Canada letter, shoring up support in Quebec, where she lambasted the CEO for his inability to speak French. And then there are other names that are dropped, Melanie Joly, Champagne as well. Mark Carney runs for everything these days. Frank Baylis, very wealthy entrepreneur, former Liberal MP. Why are we reading about such things in the newspaper, Ashton Arsenault? What's going on? What do you think is happening here?
Yeah, I'll preface this by saying, I've been fairly candid with anybody who wants to listen that I think the last election was the last election that Justin Trudeau is going to run in.
Okay.
So at some point, he's going to do the proverbial walk in the snow. Is that 18 months? Is that 24 months? Is that 36 months? I think that's anybody's guess, and I'm sure they're thinking about that as time goes on. But these are the types of pieces, honestly, I would expect at this point in the mandate. We're at about the 6-year mark. So I'm not terribly surprised about this. And plus, look, let's be honest. Everybody's been floating Chrystia Freeland as, the quote-unquote
Yeah, I'm not surprised by that. I'm not surprised by that.
Yeah, look, she's been touted as the heir apparent for a long time. Everybody knows she's ambitious. She's exceedingly capable. I don't think anybody really argues with that point. But, look, there's a couple of other names there that are going to want to have their say, and a few of them are referenced in the article. Champagne, super ambitious, super capable, old Chrétien school style politician. And then you've got people like Navdeep Bains, very high-profile minister coming out of the Mississauga area. So all would have, their eyes on the prize. And I think at the end of the day, if people think that Chrystia Freeland is just going to cakewalk into the job, I think they are sorely mistaken.
But at the last I checked, the job isn't available. I guess that's my point.
Well, you got to lay
Mr. Trudeau. Mr. Trudeau's been. I mean, I guess what else would you expect him to say? No, I'm going to quit in a year from now or something. But he was asked, and he said, "I'm not going anywhere." And why would he go anywhere? He just won again. Cam, what do you think? What is there something else to it?
Oh, of course there is.
Okay, what is it?
I'm someone who said right after the election that before the next one there would be 3 leadership races and theirs would be one of them. So I have to stand by my own prediction on this. But the fact is that, and let's be honest, if Justin Trudeau is telling you I'm going to be here, well, he is a man of his word, and if you believe him, I've got a nice glass of undrinkable water from the Skandiga First Nation, which was supposed to be clean by now, that you can have to just to know how truthful his words can be. Like, let's be real. There's always jockeying that happens in any caucus. Everyone's always looking a few steps ahead, especially those that really do want to aspire to those positions. So, you know what? I'm not surprised to hear that. The thing that I found funny about the column was the reference to Frank Bayless, because to me that was a real case of one of these things is completely unlike the other, right? Like, seriously, this is the guy who had one term in office, who barely did anything, barely showed up to work, and he got contracts for his firm right after that whole thing that happened around COVID.
Yeah,
and
ventilators.
Yeah, that's right. And he looks at that and says, "Yep, that's the resume for a possible prime minister right there." Oh, yeah. Like, give me a break. But there's going to be people who are going to come out of the woodwork like that. All this is to say is that, this is going to be the speculation until the day it happens. And I think for most of us, we'll be more surprised.
You think it's going to happen? You think he's going to take a walk in the snow or whatever the case may be?
Absolutely. I will be more surprised if he turns up to the first federal leaders debate in the next election than if he doesn't.
Okay. All right. Well, I mean, speaking of party leaders, let's talk about O'Toole, because it's interesting to talk about leadership and the Liberals for a change. Lately, it's been leadership and the Conservatives. But does having the House back help O'Toole and the Conservatives focus to unite around a common enemy? Thy name is Trudeau. What do you think, Ashton?
Yeah, well, honestly, the House couldn't have come back soon enough for Aaron O'Toole and his closest advisors. Every day he's not in the House is every day he's out of sight, out of mind, and the only thing that's making the media are the people that are out to get him. So for him, getting snippets on the news, getting that chance to go toe-to-toe with the Prime Minister in the House of Commons is going to do probably wonders for his own personal mental health, but hopefully for his poll numbers as well. Big thing that you got to look out for. So, Senator Batters, she fired the opening shot.
Yep.
I hate to say it, I think there's going to be some more shots. And I think those are going to go sort of drip, drip, drip over time. Whether or not he can get through it, I think is going to wholly depend on his poll numbers. Right now, they're sinking through the floor. He's got to right that ship. If he doesn't, caucus will sense weakness, and it will be the ball game for Mr. O'Toole.
Oh, really? Okay. All right. What do you think, Cam? Has the leadership rebellion been sidelined for now with the House?
Oh, heck no. The leadership rebellion always lives on.
All right.
It never stops. And I agree with Ashton. I think there will be more drips, because I think there's some people in that caucus who, frankly, are on a different page. Their reason for being there is different than the majority of that caucus. I think the difference is that the majority of the caucus seems to be telling him to sit down and be quiet. So I think that is maybe the one thing that can comfort Aaron O'Toole in all this. And every vote that he can get in the House where he has more and more of his caucus members on side is going to help. But on the other hand, the fact is he's going to have to face the media every day. And you saw it yesterday in the scrum that he did after the throne speech. It wasn't it wasn't his worst moment as leader, but it wasn't his greatest moment either. Because he's going to have to keep facing these questions over and over and over again. And that when these votes start coming up, like, for example, one of the first bills out of the chute will be the anti-conversion therapy bill. So how many of his members are going to stand up and vote to keep conversion therapy legal and everything that comes with that? Then it's going to be how many? Was it 2 dozen, 3 dozen? Was it 5? Was it 50? That'll always hang over his head no matter what happens. Yeah. So that's not going away. But you know what? At the very least, by being in the House, he has an outlet to actually go on the offensive against the government and actually expel some of that pressure that's being put down on him. Whereas when the House is sitting, he has nowhere to push it off to.
All right. I admire Mark Holland as a skilled partisan, but his comments as government House leader, my gosh, kind of over the top. Given that this party just won a minority mandate with 32% of the vote. I mean, 7 out of 10 Canadians wanted to show you the door. But he says he's not going to, quote, tolerate obfuscation or political games, and Parliament must pass major amendments to the criminal code about conversion therapy, I suspect, is what that's about, and the labor code, that's probably sick days, in 20 days. You have 20 days to pass this, and I'm not going to tolerate any political games. He says in a minority parliament. Okay? Is this guy for real? Okay? Wasn't it the Liberals that took Parliament at a commission for, let me see, 5 months? Ashton Arsenault, what do you think about that, Ashton? It's too much, man. It's too much.
A very small love letter to somebody of Mark Holland's ilk. He is a political hatchet man. He was sent there to do a job. He is as partisan as it gets, and I don't even say this to be derogatory, but he is a PMO lapdog. So they obviously realized that their ability to pass legislation in the last parliament was not only abysmal, but cosmically bad. So somebody like Mark Holland, who's going to be able to whip the troops into shape and focus government priorities, is probably what they need. Will he make any friends in the process? Absolutely not. It's like arguing with a brick outside of your house. You'd have better luck just throwing the brick in the trash. But unfortunately, Mark Holland will probably be in this role for the foreseeable future, and I can see exactly why the Prime Minister put him in this type of situation. This is the exact type of character you want fighting battle for you day in, day out.
Okay. Cam, agree? Cam? Yeah.
Yeah, for the most part. I don't agree with the harshness of the language, but let's be honest. You don't go into a role as government House leader without having the full confidence of the Prime Minister, and being that closely aligned. You don't put the rebel in charge of that because you want to make sure what you want to get done is gotten done. I will note, though, that kind of approach can only go on for so long. And you saw with Pablo Rodriguez in the last House, at some point you need to soften that up and bring a little bit of sugar in with, your salt, and actually try to make things a little sweeter, get along with the other side. I noticed you noticed the difference yesterday in Jagmeet Singh's tone in the press conference about not want to be taken for granted. And maybe that's a response to getting this kind of tone from the government, saying it's our way or the highway. The fact is that those 2 bills that you mentioned, they're going to get passed. The agreement's there. Heck, if the election hadn't been called, the anti-conversion therapy bill probably would have been out of the Senate before Thanksgiving this year. Yeah. And you know what? If they were in such a rush, they did have 2 months of sitting on their hands with their thumbs up.
Well, this is it. This is it. We haven't been here for half the year, and now you have 20 days to get everything done.
Give me a break. The kicker is, too, in order to do it, right, you have to do some simple things.
This program is brought to you by Ignite.